What's up, Ryuji here, and what we're going to talk about in this video is how to be an activist when you're still in high school, in middle school, when you're below 18, let's say, you're below legal age, so to speak. And I have Hudson with me right here. Hudson is 17 right now, and he's an incredible vegan activist. In fact, you just became the organizer of Anonymous for the Voiceless in Santa Monica. So congratulations.
Thanks, Ryuji.
So he's not just an activist, he's an organizer that just put out a video exactly on the topic. So it's kind of
check
funny
it out.
how that,
Cheyenne Danner.
yeah, kind of funny how that like worked out. But we're going to talk about that, and what we're going to talk about is, you know, how you can become an activist when you're still in high school, when you're still young, and how to overcome some common obstacles that you might have. So we're going to talk about how to overcome whatever fear you might have, like, you know, for example, if you think that, well, I want to go, but are they even going to let me be there as an activist? Like, can I even join an activist group? We're going to talk about ways that you might be able to convince your parents to let you go if they're not letting you go. And we're also going to talk about what to do if your schedule is just really packed. So whatever it is that's standing in your way of getting active, because I get a lot of messages from a lot of you saying, you know what, I want to get involved, but I'm 15, but I'm 13, whatever age you are. And so this is going to be a video for you. And so how did you make the transition between being vegan and then being an activist? Or actually, before that, I want to ask you, like, because we all know that you became an activist, but before that, was there ever a time when you saw activism or activists and you had a negative connotation of what it was like?
For me, so I think, like, for me, because I went vegan from, like, literally,
Right.
like, the first person I saw was Joey Carbstrong at A Cube of Truth.
Makes sense.
And then, like, I'm before I went vegan. And oh, by the way, June 9th isn't the day I went vegan, because that was the day I decided I'm not going to buy more animal products, but I still used up all the ones in my house.
Yep.
So
Got it.
Anyway, but before, like, that, I had seen James Aspie's The Speech Is Your Wake Up Call.
Yeah.
And I'd seen, like, I think I saw, like, Earthling Ed or something. So, like, for me, like, that was kind of the reason why I went vegan, from seeing activists. So
right.
then, like, the day I went vegan, I knew, like, I wanted to be an activist.
Okay, so how quickly did you become an activist?
So for me, it was relatively. So the thing is, like, the day I went vegan, I wanted to be an activist. But the thing is that, like, you know, at the time, I didn't have my license yet. And, you know, I wouldn't have my license for another, like, year. And then, meaning I couldn't go to activism events. And also, the only Cube of Truth chapter was all the way in Hollywood, which is, you know, like, hour and 20 minutes away from here.
Right.
So, and, like, you know, I was, like, you know, like, what, like 15 at the time, so I didn't want to, like, I couldn't, like, organize, you know, I just, like, didn't know how to go about that, right? And especially if I didn't have a license or anything.
Yeah.
So I was kind of just stuck for a while. And, I just didn't have the confidence to actually. I tried making videos a few times, and I just, like, I was just like, oh god, this is just not my thing. Like, I can't talk in front of the camera. So what I did at first is I just had, like, an Instagram, and I would just, like, you know, I would repost things from Vegan Sidekick and from James Aspie and stuff. So, but then I eventually became an activist when I first started making YouTube videos in December of my light just died. In December of, what was this, 2017, yeah, so like that December, because I went vegan in June, and then that December I decided, like, I uploaded my first video on YouTube, and it was just, like, basically me just, you know, getting out my, like, you know, emotions, you know, because, like, just because I, you know, just, like, I wanted to start doing something.
Yep.
I just really felt the urge to. And then what happened is, actually a few weeks after that, like around a month later, then I saw how a Cube of Truth chapter opened up like 35 minutes away from me in Santa Monica. So then that's when I went to that Cube of Truth, and that was the first time, you know, I met activists. Or no, not the first time, because my first activism event, I went, it was a James Aspie speech. There were 500 people, there were only 200 seats, so then I had to leave, but I got a picture with James Aspie. Anyway,
the key part is getting the picture.
Yeah, and because they thought, like, 40, James Aspie's like, I thought, like, 40 people would show up, and then it's like everyone loves James Aspie. So anyway, but my first actual activism event, it was in January of 2018, and that was a Cube of Truth in Santa Monica, which now I organize. And So and that was my first activism event, and I did that so I didn't do it like too regularly because like I didn't have my license yet, so you know, I just kind of had to rely on like my sister or someone taking me, and but yeah, so then that's kind of how I started. But then just from being at that Cube of Truth, like going like once, then that got me in like the groove of like, you know, like making YouTube videos. And so I was doing that for a while, just practicing, learning how to talk to the camera. And then eventually I'd say like the day where like I really like started activism was when, you know, like I think it was like July 24th or something when I saw, cause you were on day 12 of your videos.
Day 12.
Yeah, you're on like day 12. You're on like day 12, and I'm like, dude, you know what? Like, I got to start doing this, and because like I wasn't like making YouTube videos, like, you know, I liked it, but you know, I was always on Instagram. I just spent a lot more time on Instagram, and I was like, this seems like a lot more practical because I don't have to be at a Cube of Truth. Like I wouldn't have to even go to the event because, you know, most of the videos you make are, you know, just like you talking to the camera. So then I filmed a video, and you know, Ryuji taught me like all like how to moving bar, you know, how to edit, you know, like subtitles, all that stuff. And you know, I remember we were Skyping, and then it just pretty much went from there.
I see. So when you first started activism, was there? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, because a question that I get very frequently is like, "Hey, I want to get involved, but I'm 15." And I don't really understand what that means. But what would you say to someone who's like, oh, I want to start activism, but I'm 15?
Yeah, so I think what I would say is just do it, because there's really no reason to care about what, because I think what it is we have this idea, because I remember I was like that too. Like I wanted to go to a Cube of Truth, but I was only 16. And I was thinking this is going to be really weird because it's going to be only adults. And I think the reason why we have that perception is because we only watch Earthling Ed and Joey Carbstrong, these guys who are in their 30s, and and then
I think they're in their 20s.
Okay.
I don't know about Joey. Ed is like 24.
Okay, I know Joey's like 35 or something, and James Aspie's like 33. But anyway, yeah, no, Ed, you look like you're like 19. Don't worry. If you're watching this,
Joey, you do look 19.
When you see a Cube of Truth, it looks really formal, really professional, and there's like, you know, and so I think there's this idea that, you know, it's kind of like you have to join a whole organization, and by that it's you have to like probably like submit some application.
Or perhaps it's even like, oh, will they allow me to join them? Like maybe you feel like you'll show up and they'll just be like, how old are you? 16. Okay, like you can leave now.
I also think it's like vegan activism is a kind of, you know, it's a very serious issue, right? It's not like joining some like, you know, skateboarding organization or something. So I think that there may be that impression that an organization run completely by adults, that a kid wouldn't be welcome, because it might make the organization look not professional. If you see a 15-year-old doing outreach, it'd be, you know, what are you doing? And but I think that and also just because I feel a lot of people, I remember I felt this when I was becoming an activist. I felt weird hanging out with, or like going to Cube Truth when it was all adults. I wasn't sure, like, should I be talking to them? Are they gonna get kind of like annoyed? Like, okay, like, dude, this kid has to like leave me alone. He's like half my age. But then, but really at the end of the day, whatever barrier that you're feeling because of your age, because I was feeling that a lot too. The reality is that there is no age limit to being a vegan activist, and I guarantee that you'll find, if you join your local vegan activism group, that people are going to treat you with so much more respect because you're young. That's what I've noticed. Every time I go to an event and I say I'm 17, people are like they want to ask questions. They're like, oh my gosh, so how are you vegan? And like tell me your story, because no one's like, oh, like, you know, get out of here, kid, look, what are you doing? Like it always makes a great conversation starter. And because people who do vegan activism are the most selfless people, just the people who just want to do good for the world. They're not worried about their ego. They're not worried about that in any way. So they're the last people who would ever be like, oh, I don't want to be in public, you know, on a street corner doing a Cube Truth, and you know, my friends see me with this kid half my age. So because the vegan activists are just so selfless and just so welcoming, and that's something that I've learned. And So I think if you want to do activism and you're, and you're still in high school, you're still a teenager, just go for it. Because also if you stay confident with your message and you don't and you surround yourself with a positive group of people like being an activist, you'll find that by being confident with your message, you most likely won't receive much negativity from your peers. If you and as well by hanging out with vegan activists, you'll find such a great group of people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like as activists, like we're pumped to have anyone join us. Like if people are willing to join us and they want to come out, because it's all on a volunteer basis. Basically, it's like we all come out because we want to come out. There's no other reason that we're doing vegan activism apart from the fact that we want to do it. So we're always pumped to have anyone come from our point of view. And it's super awesome. Like honestly, what feedback that I've even started getting as someone who's, I'm 23 now. People start saying things like when, for example, I'm hanging out with like Renee from Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, and like the people that she meets and the people that I meet through her, they say, "Wow, it's really cool seeing you do this," because it kind of gives them hope. Kind of like the quote unquote older generation. Sometimes they're just like, well, like I've had that a lot where they don't see change happening in their own community, like in their own age group, but then they see a lot of like younger people changing, and for them it's like awesome. Like they love seeing like people like us. Like I have people who like hit me up who are way older than me that literally parts of what stops me from doing activism or what stopped me in the past was feeling like I'm so young, like I'm not, like I don't have any credibility, which in a sense is also true because I lack a lot of life experience, and I'm completely transparent about that. But I felt at some point like, well, because I'm like just this 23-year-old kid, why would all these other people like listen to me, right? Like beyond just going to a Cube of Truth, but say like even like building a brand and like putting out a lot of content and having like a lot of people like see my stuff. I was like, well, I feel like anyone who's older than like 35 would just not want to watch my videos because I'm just this kid. But what I found is that I'm sure there are some people like that. I've never met them. Probably they would never talk to me. They would probably forget my face. But on the flip side, there are a lot of people who are super pumped to watch my videos and they're like, wow, it's so cool that you're doing this and you're so young. Like it's really inspiring. So I think for all of us, like for me too, like when I see people who are like a lot younger, like when I see you and I'm like, wow, like, and I see you being like literally 6 years younger than I can't wrap my mind around the fact that like you would live another 6 years and then you'll be my age. And I know that like for Gary Vaynerchuk, who we both follow, he's 43 now, I believe, and for him, he's like, dude, for me, he's like, you live another 20 years, which is basically my whole entire life, which is longer than the time I've been conscious for, and I'm gonna be his age, and it's kind of crazy to think about it that way. But even me seeing you, I'm like, wow, it's so cool that you're doing this at your age already. So from the activist point of view, from our community, we're just so pumped to have anyone. So I think that's, there's no barrier. Like if you want to join an activism event, it's literally a one-step process. Like you show up, like that's about it. So you just show up.
Yeah, that's it.
Like I guess you make sure that like if you go to a Cube,
you just click going. You just click going on Facebook, and
or not like or like you should do that. But it's courtesy. You should do that. But the point is, it's pretty much a 1 or 2 step process. Now, I want to ask you another question, which I don't know if you would be the best qualified to answer this because I don't know how much you dealt with this. But I think another side of it too for people who want to get involved is their parents, because I know that one of the most common questions I get is people saying things like, oh, my parents don't support me being vegan. They think it's extreme. They think I'm in a cult. They think I'm going to be this, that. And on top of that, like sometimes like people message me, I don't know if you get this too, where they're like, hey, I finally managed to convince them to let me be vegan, but maybe XYZ, but they really don't want me to do activism because they think that's extreme. So did you like at all deal with that or?
Yeah, I dealt with that a ton because and I fully understand why, because I was even kind of thinking this too, because when you see the Cube of Truth and they're all wearing like anonymous masks and they're wearing all black and they're just like, like the sad music, it's like,
they might as well be sacrificing someone in the middle.
yeah, it's like, whoa, exactly. And then they're showing factory farm footage and there's slaughterhouse footage. So at first my parents were like, there's no way you're joining that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's like, we don't like that. You should go. You just mainly, and I kind of felt like that too, because I was like, man, this does look, with the masks, like, why are they doing that? Are they like, why are they trying to hide themselves? And I just didn't understand the approach to AV. Now I do. And so they weren't into it. And what happened for me, what I did, and what I recommended to people, and I've gotten tons of responses. I've gotten responses saying that it's worked. Is what I did is I just over the months from when I found Anonymous for the Voices, I just kept showing my parents more and more YouTube videos of Seb Alex, James Aspie, Earthling Ed, Joey Carbstrong,
Hudson Tarlow.
yeah, I was showing him my outreach videos from the future, and then what happened was the more I showed it to them, the more they were like, okay, man, this is the exact opposite of a cult. This is just completely love based, and they saw this is a really great organization. And what I recommend to people now is a lot of people have messaged me with that, and I'll tell them, hey, I'll send them my playlist, all my outreach conversations, and say also if you're my age, if you're 16 and your parents are worried about A, joining Anonymous Voices, but B, it might come across more relatable if it's a kid that they're watching. I'll say, okay, here, you can show them some of my videos, and then you see that there's a kid doing it, and I'm not yelling at people, I'm not blaming people, it's I have very compassionate conversations with empathy.
Yeah.
So so that's the way I was able to deal with it, by showing them more and more through the videos.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to solve a problem, what you want to do is understand what the issue is for the other person. Like, what is it really that they're opposing? And then you want to address that. So I guess that's a great way to do it. For example, if they think that, a cube of truth is extreme because they just don't know what it is, right? Like, as human beings, what we tend to do is if we don't have a lot of information on something, then we create this whole story around what we think something is going to be based on a little bit of information. But a lot of times it's not because we're dumb, it's just because we don't have enough information. And so the more information we have, the more we get to assess someone. It's kind of like meeting someone. Like, when you meet someone, at first, perhaps that person is maybe having a bad day or they're in a weird mood, and then they just make a really weird first impression. And that's what a cube can do if you just see like one picture on Instagram, right? It's just like not even a video, it's like a photo. And so that's that. But then the more you hang out with that person, you get a bigger sample of their personality, and then you're like, oh, actually, they're not that weird. So I guess in a similar way, you could do that. Another thing that people have messaged me with is that, I don't know if anyone actually did this, but there are many different ways to get involved in activism. For example, I've had people message me being like, my parents don't want me to go to a slaughterhouse, because that's like kind of intense, right? Especially if their parents don't want to go with them. Which, by the way, there's also no age that's too young to go to a slaughterhouse. I have friends who come with their children to the slaughterhouse, and their children are like, I don't know, like 7, 11, 13 years old. And they come because they want to come. Also, the parents don't like force them there. A lot of times it's kind of like a conversation between the two and stuff like that. So there's no age that's too young for that. But on the flip side, you can look at other things, like, for example, going to a sanctuary. If there's a sanctuary near you, I think can be a thing that's much more quote unquote family friendly, where I've had parents message me with this suggestion, be like, oh, you should suggest people to go to a sanctuary or do something like that, right? Because oftentimes as activists, we are seen at slaughterhouses or at the cubes or things like that. But there's so many different ways to get involved. One of which, for example, might be like making content. Another could be like going to a place like a sanctuary, which might also work great to open up your parents' minds. I think like a lot of parents who may oppose veganism would probably be more likely to go to a sanctuary than to a slaughterhouse. It's just my feeling. I don't really know this. We'd have to like split test this. But anyways, for the most part, so there are different ways that you can go about it. And also the other thing to note about the way that humans work is that the more we are acquainted with something, the more we become comfortable with that idea, right? So just because your parents are not comfortable with you doing activism now, it doesn't mean that might always be the case. Like, for example, even for myself, I remember that when I first went vegan, my parents were not very comfortable. I remember like I literally went home and the first thing my dad told me was like, yo, like, I guess do what you want. I don't agree with it, but do what you want, but don't shove your beliefs down my throat. I didn't even say anything, So at first, like, they weren't very comfortable, but as time went by, I didn't even necessarily talk to them, but just by me being vegan, then they became more comfortable with it. And same, like, even with activism, and even for me personally, now that I really think about it, it's like, at first when I started going to activism events, it was a little bit uncomfortable because it was something new. Like, I was just unfamiliar with it. But the more I went, now it's just the most normal thing in the world. I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday night. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be at the vigil. Like, it's pretty much as deep as I think about it. Well, actually, I think about it much deeper. But the point is, like, it's a pretty, now it's very simple. It becomes very normal, right? So perhaps if you start going to a sanctuary first, and then you start doing that on a weekly basis, then maybe you go to like some other like more low stakes thing, and you kind of like build it up. Then I think that has a huge chance of opening up your parents' minds, because like then they'll be like, oh, okay, like you did this, like now that you did this, like you can do that, right? Like there's this idea, like they'll even use this in fields like sales, for example, where they'll be like they have different names in different fields, but like one way that I learned it is a compliance ladder, where if you want someone to do something, you ask them to do something small, then they're much more likely to do something that's big, right? Like if I want to sell you something that's like, if I want to sell you a speaker, instead of selling you the speaker first, if I sell you a pen first, that's like just $2, then you're more likely to buy the speaker from me later. And that's a really bad example of like how that would work, but you get the idea behind it. So you can use that kind of thing to just open up your parents' minds over time. I think could work.
Yeah, I think one of the other reasons why eventually my parents let me, so once a chapter opened up in my area, why they let me join was also because for an entire month and a half before, I was making videos every weekend. And so it wasn't like I was all of a sudden like, yeah, I'm gonna be a vegan activist, so drive me to this event. It was because I was showing them I was into it, but I was already making YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And they could see, okay, this is a serious thing. This is not just, he just said this is the first time we've heard of vegan activism. So I think starting off by just grabbing your phone and making videos, that's how I started. I think was a way that I was able to introduce vegan activism.
Yeah, and I love it especially too, like I see like more and more people now creating content on social media, on Instagram specifically, I guess everywhere across the board, but I'm just not as familiar in other platforms. But I think that that's also a great way for you to get started. Especially perhaps like if you are like, you know, Gary Vee, like, by the way, if you're also like, just go follow Gary Vee as a life tip, but but you know, Gary Vee has this like kind of ongoing joke that every kid in the world wants to be like some sort of influencer or like something like that. And if you do want to do something like that, like now is honestly like such a great time to start. And what's so great too is that like, you know, and different people say different things about that, but it is true that when you're younger, it's just easier to learn things. Like you just learn things faster. Like I remember, like I learned how to make videos starting when I was 12, and I made videos. I made a ton of videos from the time I was 12 to like 22. But the point is, it was a great time for me to acquire that skill. Like all the things that we do to make videos, because actually, now that I think about it, I do have a lot of people message me being like, oh, I want to do that when I'm older. And my response is, don't wait, just start now. Like, I'm like, do you know what I would give to have started when you would potentially start, like, watching this video right now? Or like, what would I give to like start when Hudson's starting out? Like, that would be insane. I'm like, I really started like Peas by Vegan. If you look at what I did, I started this after I graduated college. Like, you still have like over a year before you even start college, like, and you're already like at this point right now, right? And I think what's important to understand is that, you know, you see people like me or like whoever you look up to, and you're like, wow, I want to do that when I'm older. But what you don't see is all the years of work it took to get up to that point. Anyone who's achieved anything, for the most part, I guess there's once in a blue moon, like someone that just doesn't. But for the most part, what I've seen, and also if you study successful people and they talk about their experiences, for the most part, what I found is that people who succeed at something have worked an inordinate amount on that thing, right? So for example, even if you look at me making videos, well, a lot of people are just discovering me now. So they're like, wow, it's so cool. Like, you know how to make videos. It's awesome. But what they don't see is that I've been making videos for 10 years. They just don't, you know, like a lot of people just don't see that. And so if you start now, then like you could just go so far. Like it's just crazy to me. Like all these things, they're just skills. You can learn every single thing it takes to do whatever it is that you want. So if you do want to make videos, I'm talking specifically about this because like that's what we both do, right? But you can learn all the skills. Like you learn how to use a camera, or you can even just start using your phone, which is incredible now. Like your smartphone or your parents' smartphone or your friend's smartphone. Like just find a way. Like just find ways to make it work. But you figure out how to make videos. You figure out how to be comfortable in front of the camera. That's a skill that you learn as well. Like literally, like I used to not be comfortable in front of the camera at all. Like I don't know for you too.
Oh
like,
no, I was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's just like So you just learn that. You learn how to edit videos, which is I think a great skill to have in life, anyways. But you can just learn all these things, and that was the time when like you just have so much time on your hands, probably. If I'm gonna be honest, like which I think like learning these skills could be a great use of your time, right? If you look at your life in the long term. So yeah, I mean, just kind of went on a rant there about making videos, but yeah, I don't know.
I'll add to that. I have the same exact experience because for me, since I've been editing videos since I started with if you don't know, but basically me and Ryuji used to
we go way back.
Because basically I used to do we both used to do this thing called cardistry, which is there a deck in here? No, it's not. Okay, but anyway, we used to shuffle cards in fancy ways, like fancy like card shuffles and stuff. And anyway, Ryuji was like the man. I like looked up to him. I like watched his live streams, like watched all of his videos. And it was funny when you were talking about how you used to make videos. I remember I was like, oh yeah, I watched that video on like how to stop procrastinating. You should like wake up at like 5 a.m. or whatever. Anyway, I also started editing videos with Final Cut when in I think like 7th grade, and now I'm in 11th grade. And every single day, every single day for years and years, I've been learning how to edit because I would post my card stuff on social media. And same thing with Photoshop and just photography, and learning how to use a camera and ISO and exposure and all that stuff. So yeah, it definitely is a process that just takes time and time, and then it'll eventually come together. Another reason why I think there's that stigma that you can't be an activist when you're still in high school is because me, for example, so this year I'm not doing cross country and track because I just wanted to focus on making videos, and I have a really hard class schedule. And on top of that, if you're like me and you're taking 3 APs and in the fourth year of language, it's just like it's like you can't make it to an event every single night, and because you see people like Earthling Ed, like Joey Carpsong, every single day they're at activism events. Most people you follow on Instagram, the reason why you follow them is because they make a lot of content and they're always at an event. But the reality is that for me, for example, I only do 2 activism events a month because that's all I can make it to with my school schedule, and also because I just I'm in high school, so I've just tons of work to do, and so I can only make it to 2 activism events a month. And also, but you might be in the position where your weekends are completely booked and you can't make it to any. But the reality is that you don't even have to ever go to an activism event. You might be saying I'm 15, meaning that you don't you have a license, so you can't get yourself to an activism event. Maybe your parents don't want to drive you. And the reality is, if you have one of these, if you have a phone, if you have a parent with a phone, then you are completely set, because by far, the most impactful way to spread the vegan message, in my opinion, and I'm sure Ryuji would agree, isn't through going necessarily to an activism event, but making content on social media to reach the biggest amount of people. And for me, I've found that that's been a great way when, I can't be, because I can't be driving around all around LA and stuff, because I'm still new to driving and stuff, and as well as just the time with school. So, but just because I have, as long as you have a phone, and you just have an Instagram account, or YouTube, then you're set when it comes to doing activism. And the reality is that you could do so much activism. You could make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos just from your bedroom, and that could potentially reach thousands of people. My most viewed video was one that or my second most viewed video is one that I just filmed at the grocery store with my iPhone, and that reached 50,000 people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah. And the thing is, like, for that too, like one thing I would say for anyone, because that's kind of what tends to happen, and I had this too when I was young. I still have this because I'm still just 23. But it's like another thing that I think we talked about Gary Vee a few times in this video, depending on how he cut it. But he talks a lot about patience, right? Because if you do make videos, then you might not see a return straight away. But what I think is so great about making videos, if you do want to do that, is that you get to practice so many skills by doing that. Not just the technical skills of how to make videos, but also of like how to speak. You'll get to understand how to talk about veganism in a way that might connect with people and that kind of thing. And I do think that, going to events and making videos, they kind of segue into each other, because the more you go to say Cubes of Truth or vigils, or the more you talk to people about veganism in real life, the more that informs how you're going to respond to people. The more that informs how we're going to talk about veganism in your videos, right? I think the reason that I've gotten better at articulating ideas is just because I talk about it with people who are not vegan. I get feedback, and then I get feedback from a bunch of different places and contexts in which I talk about it, and then I can make a video about it. So it definitely, the two like kind of like mesh. But at the same time, it's just such a great way to practice activism. Like all the things that you might do at other events, you can practice on, like Hudson said, like on a phone. So I think that's another reason why that's a great way to start getting involved.
But even for me, even when I do 2 activism events a month, and even sometimes when I can't even be that because I'm so booked with school, you may be in that situation and you just think that you can't even make videos. And the thing that has been key for me, and that as we've mentioned so many times, depending on how we cut the video, Gary Vee, depending on because he always talks about this as well. Go follow Gary Vee. Is that it really
That's
is
like the main takeaway of this video.
Yeah, go follow Gary Vee. But anyway, if you have a super busy schedule and you don't even have time for videos, the key that I found, and as much as like I don't want to hear this answer whenever I think about it, is getting rid of leisure time. So for example, before I was a vegan activist, whenever I wasn't doing schoolwork and whenever I wasn't doing exercising, I was playing video games and watching Netflix. That was my biggest hobby. And I said, and for a while I said, I'm in high school, like, probably just, I want to be an activist, but just, I don't know, like, don't even, one of the reasons why I didn't start making videos until around like 6 months after, even though I couldn't go to a Cube of Truth, was because I was just like, I just don't have time, I'm so busy. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, well, I'm busy Monday through Thursday with school, but then my Friday afternoon and my Saturday morning, I'm playing video games and I'm watching Netflix. So then what helped me, and as much as it sucks, was getting rid of that leisure time and just focusing that into vegan activism.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for me too, like, like, people sometimes ask me like, oh, like, how do you make a video like every single day? And I'm like, I don't know, I just put in the time. Like, there's no secret. Like, I was just traveling. I just came back from Berkeley, where I was there with Renee King-Sonnen from Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, and I was filming stuff for her all day. It's like we would wake up and then go to an event, and then I would film her, and then we'd go to another event, and I would film that again. And it was just like the whole day, basically. We'd come back, I'd be exhausted, but I'm like, and then like I might even make videos for her while I'm doing that, because now I'm not just making videos for myself, I'm making videos for Rowdy Girl Sanctuary and the Rancher Advocacy Program and all these different things. I have the podcast I have to put together. So when I come back, I put all these different things together for her, and then I'm like, well, I got to do my own content, and then I just do it after that, and I just find a way to do it, because yeah, like, whenever one thing I learned in my life is that when people say I don't have time, or when I say I don't have time, it doesn't mean that I don't have time. It means I don't have time for that. We always make time for other things. So that's another thing that I would invite you to think about. So the last thing I want to personally leave you with is that whatever it is that you want to start, whether it be you want to go to a vigil, you want to go to a Cube of Truth by Anonymous for the Voiceless, maybe you want to go to some other protest, maybe you want to go to a sanctuary, maybe you want to start making videos, whatever it is, find a way to get started. I think that's the most important thing. For me, there's so many things that I wanted to do that I put off for years. Like, before I did Peace by Vegan, I did this other vlog that you were just talking about. I did that vlog, by the way, literally to learn how to be comfortable in front of the camera. That was the entire point of the vlog. But I've wanted to do that for 3 or 4 years before I actually started that. Like, I've been wanting to do Peas by Vegan and started to make videos when I first went vegan, which was 2.5 years before I actually started doing it. And I just procrastinated literally for years, and there's no telling how far it'd be if only I'd started sooner. Because what you're gonna find, and what I found in life is that when you want to start something, it's more important to get it started than to get it perfect. And at first, just go with the assumption that you're gonna suck. Like for me, like even at this point, it's in my mind, I'm like 188 videos deep or something like that on my Instagram currently, and I'm like the first 1,000 videos I make is kind of like I'm like warming up.
Yeah.
Like that's literally how I think about it. So I mean, you just build day after day after day. But the most important thing is to get started, because if you don't get started, then you're just never going to get started. Like here's the bottom line is, if you don't start today, then you're probably never going to start. There's no better time to start. So what I would say is just find a way to get started, whatever it is that you want to do, and make it happen, and then go from there and build. Any last thoughts on last thoughts on your part?
Yeah, so the one more thing that I would want to add is, if you're if one of the reasons that you're not too sure about becoming an activist is because you're not too sure what people at your school, if you're in high school, will think. And the two things that I have learned that have really helped me along being an activist and eliminating that fear and just eliminating other people criticizing you is two things when I really think about it. And the first thing, and the key part, is that when you because Ryuji, I'm sure you get this too. Like we get a lot of messages from people saying I went vegan, now everybody in my school is making so much fun of me, and it just every single day when I go into class, everyone's making fun of me. Maybe they were vegetarian before, now they're vegan. Everyone's making fun of them for not consuming dairy and eggs or meat or whatever. And I think that the key, if whether it's veganism or an activist, is to be 110% confident in what you do. Because when we think about why people bully people and who people choose to bully, people aren't bullying the star athlete. Why? Because they're super confident, and because they know it's not going to get them anywhere. And even if they try, they're just going to be really confident about it. People bully the person who's new to the basketball team because they know they're not confident about it. So what I have found, that in not only with veganism but in all aspects, is that if you stay very confident with your message, that chances are you're going to receive a lot less, if any, bullying. Because, for example, if someone finds my Instagram and they say at school, like, oh my god, like I saw you on Instagram, like what, I didn't know you were a vegan activist. And if I were to say like, oh my gosh, please don't tell anyone, like nobody can know about that, like you don't tell a soul, people would see, that would signal people, oh my god, I'm going to tell everyone, this is going to be the greatest thing, because it's going to be like, because then they would realize like, oh, this is going to be like a fun, and grab my popcorn, this will be an entertaining thing to see. But then if I'm really confident about it, people are like, okay, well, why would I bully this kid? Why would I say like, oh, you're such a loser, if he's like so happy about it, you know what I'm trying to say? So then, and at the same time, if someone sees me wearing a vegan t-shirt, they're like, oh, are you vegan? Or if they see me eating something vegan, they ask if I'm vegan. Instead of trying to hide it, so you're like, oh no, like I'm not vegan, I'm just eating this, vegan bar or whatever. I'll say like, yeah, I'm vegan and I'm really passionate about it. Like, well, what are your thoughts on it? And then it's not someone's initial reaction to be like, oh, you're such a loser, you're vegan, because. And even if they do, then I'll say that. Then I stay really confident. I'm like, oh, so like, what makes you say that? I'm not like, oh my god, like no, I don't react. And so I think that's one of the key to being a vegan activist in high school. And I had that similar situation when I was on the tennis team, and they're like, because for example, I was literally, I just joined the team because like my friends were doing it. I'd never played tennis once in my life. Everyone else had been playing for 10 plus years, and I was last on the team, never won a single game. And the thing is, I was realizing, I'm like, okay, wait, like why, like everyone was like so happy to see me at practice. No one was giving me a hard time, because the reason why is because I was just really excited to be there, and I was confident about it. I was confident. I was like, man, like I'm the worst, I wasn't trying to hide it. So I think that goes for all avenues. And then the other thing is also really, because I hear a lot of people saying the one of the main reasons is like, all my friends are making fun of me, like, all the people around me. And the key is, in my opinion, to change the people you hang out with. And because actually I don't have a single person, there's not a single other person in my grade who's vegan. But I have a really strong friend group of people who all follow my Instagram. They all follow your Instagram as well. They're always talking about your videos. And even though they're not vegan because they haven't truly made that connection like that, I choose to surround myself with people who are just supportive of other people's interests. It wouldn't matter what I'd be doing, but I choose to surround myself with those people. And a lot of people are like, oh, but I've, you might like, I've been friends with, like Jason since 3rd grade. Like he's my buddy. And it's like sure, but they're, if you want but then you may have to, accept like, okay, well that's just how it's gonna be, because I have some, because then there are some people who might not be, the biggest fan of it, but then I just kind of like, okay, well whatever, but then I choose to surround myself with people who are really supportive and really have an interest in what I'm interested in, even if they themselves aren't vegan.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all this insight. Hope you're inspired to get started as an activist, if that's what you want to do. We really hope to see you out sometime. We really hope to see your videos, your photos. Send us what you're doing. That would be awesome. I always love, by the way, I love hearing from people who sometimes they hit me up. They're like, yo, like, I want to get involved. Like, especially when it's like, yeah, like I said earlier, like, it's so inspiring. They were like, oh, I'm like 13, I'm 15, I'm 17. Like, I want to do something. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, try this. And then they're like, hey, I just wanted my first cube of truth. And it's so awesome. Like, I love hearing those stories. So if you have those stories, leave them in the comments or send them to us as messages. We'd love to hear from you. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video once again. We really appreciate it. We'll talk to you very soon. Peace.